Welcome back, everyone, to Srila Prabhupada, our Founder-Acharya, and that is the title of this lesson, too, because I call it the signature lesson. It's the lesson that best represents all the lessons. In Lesson 2, we examined the Founder-Acharya principle, its origin and historical development. In this lesson, we'll look at our own Founder-Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and how he realized and revealed his position as a service to his Guru Maharaja, to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and to all generations of his followers. So this title slide, as all title slides of the lessons, have a meaning. And anyone know where Prabhupada is there? Has anyone been to the Bhaktivedanta Manor? Okay, so to this day, if you go to the Bhaktivedanta Manor in northwest of London, you can still go up to Prabhupada's quarters and look out onto the south lawn and see where His Divine Grace sat. And in the summer of '73, Prabhupada sat there a lot because Shyam Sundar, the GBC, kept a lot of VIPs coming to meet with Prabhupada, a lot of famous people. But whether the person was famous or just a little child, Prabhupada gave the person his undivided attention. So here's the point. The child in the foreground okay, now she's maybe 4 years old, something like that. No. The child in the foreground appears to be giving Srila Prabhupada some kind of toy, some gift. There's a loving exchange going on. So the child in the foreground of this slide is eligible to have a foundational relationship with Srila Prabhupada as his initiated disciple in the background. That's my god sister Srimati Hemavati Devi Dasi. So she's an initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada. This little girl, if she's still with us, is probably around 50 by now. But she can also have a foundational shiksha relationship, with Srila Prabhupada. And that's the point, as I keep saying. Whatever generation we are, whatever God family we're in, wherever place in the world we're living, it's not about diksha, it's about shiksha. Prabhupada is the foundational shiksha guru of all his followers, including his diksha disciples, like me, right? It's really about foundational shiksha. He lives forever by his divine instructions. Certainly the initiation ceremony is a divine rite of passage. Certainly the Guru's vapu is divine because it's used in Krishna's service, body, mind, and words. But he really lives forever by his divine instructions. Now we're going to have some fun. This is also a history lesson. We're going to start with prophecies, which I hinted at in the last lesson. Now we'll look at prophecies, both Puranic and Gaudiya, that Srila Prabhupada fulfilled. This is from the New York Times. Srila Prabhupada is playing on the tom-tom, little drum, in the park. It's either Washington Square or Tompkins Square, I'm not sure which. It could have been Washington Square, they also went there too. This was Bruce, he became Brahmananda. This is Chuck, he became Achyutananda. And they were the first to get up and dance. Brahmananda said, I thought if Swamiji is going to sing and play the drum for hours, then the least I can do is get up and dance as long as he's singing. He will sing. But he didn't realize that the Swami could sing for hours. So he had to dance for hours. Srila Prabhupada plays the bongo in New York City's, okay, this is Tompkins Square Park. I must have tracked it down. Sankirtan, fall 1966. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and before you raise your hand, the key word in the question is Puranic. What does Puranic mean? Right, and Purana means old, very old, ancient. Don't think Gaudiya. That's only in the last 500 years. Who knows the 5,000-year-old Puranic prophecy Srila Prabhupada fulfilled? Anybody know? Most devotees don't know this, but in 1996, was anybody here in ISKCON in 1996? Okay, I'm really feeling my years. That was the centennial year of Srila Prabhupada. He was born in 1896, so in 1996 we celebrated his centennial. And the centennial minister for the event was His Holiness Lokanath Maharaj. And it was the first year we had a large Vyasa Puja book for Srila Prabhupada. Do you get the Vyasa Puja book every year? Yeah? It's a big, oversized, coffee table-sized book. And so in that centennial Vyasa Puja book, it was an introduction by the centennial minister Lokanath Maharaj. And he spent the introduction introducing us to prophecies that Prabhupada fulfilled. So these prophecies were based on research by ISKCON scholars. Okay, no takers on the Puranic prophecy? Okay, all right, I'll just tell you. So here's a free translation of the prophecy, which appeared in the introduction to Srila Prabhupada's Centennial Vyasa Puja book. Although the translation embellishes the original Sanskrit, it accurately portrays what Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada have done, as well as what Shastra says is yet to come. So here's the scene. 5,000 years ago, just before Krishna left, he was still on the planet in Dwarka, and Ganga Devi, goddess Ganga, the goddess whose energy is the Ganges River, approached Krishna and said, this is right in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. She said, "Oh Krishna, oh Lord, we can see that your pastimes are about to end, and people are becoming more and more materialistic. You have been very merciful to us. After you leave, however, all the sinful people of Kali Yuga will bathe in our waters, and we will become overwhelmed with sinful reactions." Smiling, the Lord replied, "Be patient." Where's the mic? Want to read? Be patient.
After 5,000 years, my mantra Upasaka, worshipper of the holy name, will appear in this world and spread the chanting of my holy name everywhere.
So you find this right there. Now you can Google it, and it's a little controversial because some scholars say that the mantra Upasak is Mahaprabhu. He did it. But actually, did he do it? He left it to someone else to do it. Now there's more to this. That's just the actual couple of verses where this was said. But from text 49 through 51, the whole thing is given here. Krishna also said to Ganga, he said this, not only in Bharatvarsha, India, but also all over the world, people will chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And because the devotees of Lord Hari are so pure, anyone who contacts them will become purified from sinful reactions. And then Krishna turns Ganga's complaint back on her. It's like a little rhetorical jujitsu where you use the energy of your opponent against your opponent. So Krishna says, these pure devotees will visit Bharatvarsha and purify you of sinful reactions by bathing in your sacred waters. So she's complaining, all these Kali Yuga folks are going to come and dump all their all their sinful activities in our sacred waters, and we're going to get polluted. And so Krishna says, no, be patient. In 5,000 years, that's patience, right? I'm going to send my mantra Upasak, great worship of the holy name. He will travel all over the world. He'll inspire so many people to come to Bharatvarsha and bathe in your sacred waters, and they're going to purify you because they're pure devotees. Now, here's the last line of the prophecy. You've probably heard it. It's the only line Prabhupada told us. So you have to not only tell me the line, but you have to tell me why this is the only line of the prophecy Prabhupada told us. It's not too hard to figure out once you get the line. So the line is this. This, Krishna is still talking to Ganga. This period of worldwide chanting of Hare Krishna will continue for 10,000 years. That's the only line Prabhupada told us. Now, why? Why didn't Prabhupada tell us the backstory of Ganga and Krishna and Mantra Upasak? Why didn't Prabhupada do that? He just told that this is predicted in the Puranas, Brahma Vaivarta Purana, to go on for 10,000 years, this Hare Krishna movement. Why didn't he tell us what came before? Oh, where's the mic? All right? I think Prabhu has figured it out.
I was thinking he did not want to glorify himself.
Yeah, that's Prabhupada. He didn't want us to say to him, oh, you're the Mantra Upasak, all glories to you. Prabhupada didn't call it the Bhaktivedanta Swami movement. He called it the Hare Krishna movement. He was always directing people to Krishna, absolutely transparent via media. Now, who knows, now more people know this, and we've already had a little attempt to say something, and I think you're on the right track. Who knows the 500, this is Gaudiya now, the 500-year-old Gaudiya prophecy Srila Prabhupada fulfilled. Same picture, but it's a similar situation. Just as Ganga was concerned and went to Krishna in Dwarka, so Narada Muni was very concerned about, he was envisioning the Kali Yuga because he's Trikalagya, he can see what's coming. So he goes to Mahaprabhu, he goes, Narada Muni is such a yogi, he can go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. He finds Mahaprabhu in Golok Navdvip doing his eternal Sankirtan. And he says, what are we going to do about this? People are going to suffer so much. That's great souls. They're paradukkha dukhi. They're unhappy by the unhappiness of others. So there is a Gaudiya Shastra. There's a prediction about another prediction that Prabhupada fulfilled. Do you know what this is? This is more known to the devotees. Raise your hand.
The Mahaprabhu predicted by Senapati Bhakta.
Yeah, Senapati Bhakta. People know this. Especially since, I think it was 1988 or 89, Jayapataka Maharaj, he described this. So, so let's see here. In the Sri Caitanya Mangala, this is where it's recorded by Srila Lochan Das Thakur. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu tells Narada Muni, who is anxious about our suffering in Kali Yuga, Mahaprabhu says, quote, with the powerful chopper of Nam Sankirtan, I will cut the hard knots of demoniac desires from the hearts of everyone. And here's the famous Bengali verse. Yadi papi chadid dharma dure deshe yoy mora senapati bhakta yai be tatoy. Let's read it in plain English. Want to read?
Even if the sinners reject religion or flee to foreign countries, I will send more Senapati Bhakta, my military field commander, to go there and deliver them.
And Prabhupada was very much the military field commander. If you've seen movies or pictures, head held high, leading the pack. We couldn't even keep up with him. He used to walk so fast on morning walks. And he would even use military images in his writings. In the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says in one purport, one should execute Krishna consciousness as if in military discipline. And then when we started catching on how to distribute books, Prabhupada said, yes, we are raining books into the laps of the conditioned soul, just like in wartime they drop bombs. Yeah, he was saying that a lot. Military. And then when people were getting when the newcomers at apartment 2C, when the newcomers at 26 Second Avenue, when they were getting a little sad or feeling separation from Maya, And they wanted to leave. And Prabhupada said, that's all right. You take something out of this jar here. You take what was it? ISKCON bullet. That's a glubjaman. Nobody could make glubjamans like Prabhupada. So that would put them in a happy mood. Stay high forever. Okay. Yeah, so that's from Mahaprabhu's time. Now, more people know this one. Who knows the late 19th century prophecy Srila Prabhupada fulfilled? So this is like just like 130 years ago or something. Anybody know the late 19th? Here's the Guru Parampara, one after another.
Is that Bhakti Vinod Thakur
Yes.
prediction about the Europeans and Americans?
No. That's something else. You're close. You're getting close. It's a prediction about a person who will come. You know? It's from Sajjana Toshini. You know? No? It's not the Adbhuta Mandir and the Navadvita Mahatmya and all that. Okay, well read this, Prabhu.
A personality will soon appear in order to preach the teachings of Sri Caitanya and move unrestrictedly over the whole world with his message.
Yeah. So Prabhupada, who had a keen sense of history, especially spiritual history, told us this on one of his Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Disappearance Day lectures. Quote, he, 1896, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, wanted to introduce this Krishna consciousness movement by sending his book, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, his life and precepts. Fortunately, that year was my birth year, and by Krishna's arrangement, Guru Maharaja and I came in contact. I was born in a different family. My Guru Maharaj was born in a different family. Who knew that I will come to his protection? Who knew that I would come in America? Who knew that you American boys will come to me? These are all Krishna's arrangement. We cannot see how things are taking place. So Prabhupada had a very keen sense of history. Having heard prophecies Prabhupada fulfilled, we will now look at how Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu set the world stage over 5 centuries to send his Senapati Bhakta, his military field commander, to just the right place, at just the right time, to launch the Krishna consciousness movement worldwide. So sure, Mahaprabhu could have spread it all over the world by himself. He's God, he can do anything. But instead, when he came, oh, there he is, Panchatattva. The first thing Mahaprabhu did was, in the 16th century, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement ignited a bhakti revival throughout India. But as we mentioned, within 100 years after Mahaprabhu left, he allowed that renaissance to be overshadowed, eclipsed, disgraced, driven underground by so many Uppa Sampradayas. And why did he do that? Well, he had a plan, a 500-year plan. He's patient too. Okay, where's the mic? Okay, you want to... Okay, so read the next bullet point. This is how Lord Chaitanya set the world stage over several centuries.
During the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries, when Lord Chaitanya's movement was forced underground in India, the age of discovery and the Industrial Revolution brought technology and new horizons to Europe.
Mm-hmm. So Mahaprabhu was encouraging everyone to explore, if you will, inner space. As Kaviraj Goswami said, may that Lord who was known as the son of Srimati Shachi Devi be transcendentally situated in the innermost chambers of your heart. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali to bestow what no incarnation ever offered before, the most sublime and radiant, mellow taste of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. So Mahaprabhu was encouraging everyone to go within, but in the West, that was reflected materially in everybody looking to the outer world, because in the West they were throwing off the shackles of a corrupt church in Rome, and they were looking at the stars, Galileo with his telescope, and sailing ships were going around the world. And six years after Mahaprabhu appeared, Columbus, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He was looking for a short way to India by going west, because he was convinced the world was round, not flat, but he didn't know how big the earth was, so he bumped into the West, what became known as the West Indies. So, so many, from the Renaissance up to the modern day, to this moment, there's continual revolutions in transportation and communication, because that's what Mahaprabhu, it was the infrastructure Mahaprabhu was putting in place to take the movement to every town, village, and now device, right? You can have the whole teaching on your device. Okay, so here's another one to read, Prabhu.
In the late 19th century, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur rediscovered Lord Chaitanya's pure teachings and envisioned a worldwide movement of Krishna consciousness.
Yes, so we mentioned that in the last lesson. Worldwide movement. But he knew he didn't have time to manifest it, so he prayed and received his ray of Vishnu's son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Read that.
In the early 20th century, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Gaudiya vision revived Krishna consciousness in India and sent the first Vaishnava preachers abroad.
Right, but as we'll see in the next lesson, Sunday morning at 11, that mission fragmented. But we'll get to that. But as soon as the 1960s came around, then Lord Chaitanya really stepped up his historical stage setting. He made some very powerful adjustments in the world scene. So, read that.
In the 1960s, when Srila Prabhupada sailed to the West, the Roman Catholic Church eased its attitude towards other faith traditions. The USA relaxed its Asian immigration laws, and the American counterculture began to look to the East for truth.
Very powerful. A religious adjustment. There was a big meeting, 1961 and 1965, called Vatican II, the Second Ecumenical Council. And in that council, for the first time in its 1,500-year history, the Roman Catholic Church dropped its claim of exclusivity, that they were the only way, that you had to be a Roman Catholic or else you were going to hell. So they said, no, actually God can reveal himself through other faith traditions. They were trying to patch things up with Judaism. It was Pope John the 23rd, who was a very revolutionary kind of pope, just much like Pope Francis today. So that was that gave subtle but very powerful psychological permission for Roman Catholics worldwide to read other teachings. So, for example, one fine day, a nice Roman Catholic boy named Steve, who had been reading the Buddha's teachings. He was a welfare worker in New York City, in the Lower East Side, and he was walking from his work at the welfare office to his apartment to have lunch. And he walked down 2nd Avenue to get to his apartment. And when he passed 26 2nd Avenue, he did a double take, because in the storefront, he saw somebody who looked just like the Buddha to him. Shaved head, big earlobes, sitting in cross-legged, peach-colored robes. And then he saw a sign on the storefront window. It said, Bhagavad Gita classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Matchless gifts. So he made a mental note. I've got to go to that place as soon as possible, as soon as I have some time. So he did go back. He went into a Gita class. They'd have Gita classes every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 p.m. Sat down, heard the Swami speak, and then he asked a very Buddhist kind of question at the end. He said, Swamiji, how do I understand How can I understand that I'm just nothing? That's the Buddhist solution, right? Just annihilate your individuality. Everything comes from the void, everything returns to the void. Doesn't really make any sense, but so how can I understand that I'm just nothing? So Swamiji said, you're not nothing, you're something, but you're not this body. And that began a relationship between Swamiji and Steve, who on Radhastami 1966 became Satsvarupa Das, who 6 years later in 1972 on Lord Nrsinga's appearance day became Satsvarup Das Goswami, who 6 years later in 1978 at the Gaur Purnim festival was commissioned by the GBC to write Srila Prabhupada's authorized biography. These are all the arrangements of Krishna. We cannot see how things are taking place. Yeah. Okay, so that was a religious adjustment. Here's a big one. It was a political adjustment. The USA relaxed its Asian immigration laws. Growing up in America, I never met an Indian person. I mean, now Indian people are all over the world. It's a great diaspora of engineers and motel owners and doctors, lawyers. I mean, Indian people are in government in America. It's amazing. But in 1965, I met one because I was a college kid. I was working a summer job in a factory, and there was a little brown man next to me on the assembly line. And I thought he was so funny because he talked funny to me. And then he thought I was so funny. The only funnier thing than an American imitating an Indian is an Indian imitating an American. So we just laughed at each other all summer, you know. So here's how he got it. His name was Ali. I think he was Muslim, you know. So he got in because in 1965, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which is now subsumed under a big, gigantic bureaucracy called the Department of Homeland Security, they lifted a ban on Asians coming to America because in World War II, the Japanese were our enemy, the Japanese and the Germans against the Allies, right? So Indians weren't allowed to come. But just as soon as Prabhupada got his sponsorship from the Agarwals, and then as soon as he got his P form cleared and he got passport, visa, and got passage on the Jaladuta, this happened, you know. This was like a divine arrangement of Krishna, allowing an Asian person like Srila Prabhupada to come in. But here's the biggest one. And the American counterculture began to look to the East for truth. I was part of a generation that was looking toward the East. That's what we were doing. And we were dropping out of leaving our families, leaving our school, leaving careers, just leaving church, synagogue, mosque. We wanted something more. And we were looking to the East for truth. And our heroes, musically, were people who were also looking to the East for truth. Who was that? The Beatles. So in 1965, we were all growing up with the Beatles, right? And so in 1965, the Beatles had an album called Rubber Soul. They always had puns for their titles. And there was one cut by George Harrison. And we didn't know, but he had been befriended by Ravi Shankar, the sitar player Ravi Shankar. So we hear on this album this one cut called Norwegian Wood. And it starts with Harrison's sitar. Bum, 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 bum. And it was fascinating. What's that? And then John Lennon singing the lyrics. And then it became more and more prominent. More on the albums, you know, George's music. Until finally, by the time the Beatles broke up, George was full on, we didn't even know it, but George had met the devotees. If you've read Shyam Sundar's Rhino books, or Mukunda Maharaja's Miracle on 2nd Avenue, George was getting interested in Krishna consciousness. So many of us followed his vibration right to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. So that was a big... Prabhupada did not have an audience in India. Nobody was going to give him one of their sons to start a spiritual revolution. Everybody wanted to copy the West, including Nehru and all these people. They wanted to just become an industrial power. They didn't want to follow Gandhi's way of, what is it, Swadeshi. You produce only what you need, use only what you produce, spinning your own cloth. That was the Gandhi Prabhupada liked. Prabhupada had no use for Gandhi, the Gita commentator, but he did like Gandhi, the simple liver. So these were very amazing arrangements. He created a whole generation of Americans dropping out of society, looking to the East for truth. And if you ever read Radhanath Swami's The Journey Home, has anybody read that? Yeah, so we were all doing that, but he had the best story because he ended up all the way at Prabhupada's lotus feet in India. Okay, so when Prabhupada came, alone in America, Srila Prabhupada aimed to revive Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's Gaudiya mission. As I mentioned, the last thing from Prabhupada's mind, he had no idea that he didn't want to be the Founder-Acharya of anything new. He just wanted to revive his Guru Maharaja's mission. And he was doing a couple of things. So the first place Prabhupada stayed was at the Agarwals in Butler, Pennsylvania. So Sally Agarwal, the American wife of the Indian man Gopal Agarwal, did a very smart thing. As soon as Swamiji arrived, she called up the Butler Eagle newspaper and said, I thought you might be interested to know that for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be hosting a real live Indian Swami in our townhouse. Now, if you said the word Swami in 1965, small town America, Butler is still a small town. You might have well have said magic carpet, genie out of a bottle, something bizarre or exotic. So they said, oh yeah, well, we'll come on right over. So later in the seminar, you're going to see a picture of Prabhupada posing for the Butler Eagle in lesson 5. So one thing Prabhupada was doing was he was observing Americans. He was studying us to see how we lived. Because he had just come from Vrindavan. I mean, you can't even imagine going from what was a pretty sleepy village, Krishna conscious village, into the middle of even Americans don't usually go to New York City because it's such a crazy place. But that's where Prabhupada ended up. But the studying American started in Butler. Like Prabhupada, there was no room for him actually in the Agarwal's house. So they put up Prabhupada in a YMCA. They just got him a room in the local Y, down. They have YMCA in Australia? Okay. So then Prabhupada walked several blocks to the Agarwals and he'd cook. He'd cook a nice midday meal. And they loved it, So one morning, Swamiji is in Sally's downstairs bathroom, and all of a sudden she sees water coming out from under the bathroom door. And she starts pounding on the door. Swamiji, are you all right? Are you all right? She opens the door, and she sees Prabhupada. He's trying to wash his clothes, Indian style, on the American bathroom floor, which is not sloped to a drain like in India. He's doing whap and bap and mush and gush and the whole thing, Oh, Swamiji, I'll have to show you the washing machine. And Prabhupada's thinking, washing machine? What's that? And then he saw how Sally cleaned the house. Vacuum cleaner? What's that? So then Prabhupada told us later, he said, when I finally got to New York City, I was simply amazed at how you people were living. Sometimes I would just get on a bus, I put a coin in the meter, I'd sit down and I'd just ride all over New York on the bus just to see how you people were living. He was studying Americans because he wanted to weave in everyday life, as you know Prabhupada always did, very practical examples. He wanted to weave into his preaching examples from American life. So that's what he was doing, but he was also doing this. Of course, this is not a photo of him alone. I think that was from later. But Dr. Mishra, Dr. Ramamurti Mishra, had kindly given Prabhupada a room to stay in the Upper West Side. And Prabhupada was writing letters to whom? No, that's before. That's before he came to America. He tried that. He tried to write politicians and businessmen, and nobody's interested. So raise your hand if you know who he was writing to. His godbrothers. Hey, I'm here. I made it. I'm in America. Remember the mission? We're all supposed to work together, work cooperatively to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. In the 30s, Srila Saraswati Thakur had sent the Gaudiya Math preachers to London because that's where the action was. But Prabhupada, because of his BTG, in 44 he started Back to Godhead, he was always up on the current events. He knew that the action had moved to New York. You'll hear and see that later on. So if you do have the Bhaktivedanta database, you go into pre-USA correspondence, and you'll see, well, you can go there now if you want, but and there's a lot of letters Prabhupada's writing to his Gaudiya Math godbrothers, and he's trying to inspire them that he's here, so let's, better late than never, you know, it's been 30 years since the Gaudiya Math fragmented. So there's a lot of letters, but what I'm going to show you is an excerpt from one letter that is especially telling, because he's writing a letter to his godbrother, Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj, who was known in the Gaudiya Math days as Kunja Baba, Kunja Bihari Prabhu, who had been in the Ramakrishna mission and then was converted, was inspired by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to come to the Gaudiya mission. And he was a very expert organizer and arranger and a fundraiser. So Prabhupada knew that. So he wrote to his sannyas, took sannyas later, Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj, who was in charge of the Chaitanya Math in the Mayapur area. And he's approaching this real talented organizer, fundraiser, resourceful person to try to raise some funds to get something going. So for example, Prabhupada has said, I'll just tell you some other excerpts. He said, you know, I'm here in America, and these Americans are so naive, they're being fooled by these impersonalists, the Ramakrishna people. They call themselves the Vedanta Society in America. There's still a few outposts in America. And they have $1 million skyscraper, Prabhupada said. And Prabhupada said they're preaching this 10th class bogus philosophy. But we need a $1 million skyscraper. And I can recruit people, and I can organize. I just need funds. So, where's the mic? Okay, so why don't you read this excerpt. You're going to see the word, various forms of the word cooperation a few times here. Here it is.
So here is a chance for cooperation between us, and I shall be glad to know if you are ready for this cooperation. I came here to study the situation, and I find it very nice, and if you are also agreeable to cooperate, it will be all very nice by the will of Srila Prabhupada. If you agree, then take it for granted that I am one of the workers of the Sri Mayapur Chaitanya Math. I have no ambition for becoming the proprietor of any math or mandir, but I want working facilities. Letter to Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj, 8 November 1965.
Again, you don't have to read the reference, but look at this. Long before the corporate culture coined the phrase servant leader, Prabhupada, that's what he's saying. I'm one of the workers. I'm your worker. You can be in charge, Maharaj, but I'm your worker. I don't want to be. I have no ambition. I want working facilities. And you, Maharaj, by Guru Maharaja's grace, you have those Calcutta Marwaris in the palm of your hand. Those crore-patis, you can inspire them to give. And you also, I know you have contacts in the government house in New Delhi, and you can override their objections, because the government house in New Delhi didn't want any money leaving the country because India was struggling. So, but I know you can inspire them to let those rupees leave the country and come in as dollars. And I'm here, I can do it. So what do you think happened? Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj's response sounded cooperative at first, then later turned to avoidance. As it turned out, almost no one in the Gaudiya Math would help Srila Prabhupada preach in the West. Since their decades-long disobedience to the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had dismembered the Math's mission, Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers were incapable of cooperating with its revival. They couldn't do it. So Lord Chaitanya was showing Prabhupada in that first year from, say, September 65 to June 66, that, you know what, they're not going to help you. Actually, only one Gaudiya Math person helped Srila Prabhupada somewhat. It was Sripad Narayan Maharaj, and he sent a mridanga, the first mridanga, and he sent some incense. And it took a long time. Prabhupada, his letters, Prabhupada kept writing him. So where's the incense? Where's the mridanga? But he did come through. But Mahaprabhu showed Prabhupada, they're not going to help you. You're going to have to do it alone. And I'll help you, and your Guru Maharaj will help you, and the 6 Goswamis will help you. You're going to have to found a fresh branch of the Gaudiya mission, of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. So Prabhupada wasn't ambitious to do that, but that's actually what happened. And then Prabhupada wrote a letter 6 years later to a godbrother of mine, talking about those days when he was all alone. It was really tough. Let's see. Yes, he wrote, this is in 72, he wrote this letter, about 65, 66. Quote, when I was alone in your New York, I was thinking, who will listen to me in this horrible, sinful place? All right, I shall stay a little longer. At least I can distribute a few of my books. That is something. But Krishna was all along preparing something I could not see. And he brought you to me one by one, sincere American boys and girls, to be trained up for doing the work of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now I can see that it is a miracle. Otherwise, your city of New York, one single old man, with only a few books to sell for barely getting eatables, how he can survive? What to speak of introducing God consciousness movement for saving the humankind? That is Krishna's miracle. Now I can see it. So in 1965, Prabhupada was in obscurity. So I say in this slide, he went from obscurity to 66 to Swamiji. This picture is not historically accurate. There were no Twin Towers in those days. But there's the Statue of Liberty, famous, give me you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses, which our current president doesn't seem to like. And there's Prabhupada. And look at this. It says 26th Avenue. Bogus. It's 22nd Avenue. Anyway, you get the idea. There's matchless gifts. We're going to see later how this was the first worshipable deity, a painting that my god sister Jadharani did under Prabhupada's direction. So from obscurity to Swamiji. Where's the mic? Okay, please read this, Prabhu.
Mostly neglected by his god brothers, Srila Prabhupada was obliged to found a fresh branch of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. On July 13, 1966 in New York City, he incorporated the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, signing the papers only with his sannyasa name, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami.
Right, because now Prabhupada knows that he's going to have to found a fresh branch of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. That means he's going to have to be the Founder-Acharya of that fresh branch. But he also knows that Americans don't know a guru from a ruru. I mean, they're just totally in the dark. So he knows he can't demand respect from people born and raised on sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So he's going to just have to inspire them to come aboard his fledgling movement. Between the fall of 1965 and the summer of 1966, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu showed Srila Prabhupada that almost no help would come from India, that he would have to start a fresh branch of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, and that he was being uniquely empowered to inspire and lead international devotees as their founder-acharya. Thus, Srila Prabhupada went from obscurity to Swamiji, which is a rather familiar address, but Prabhupada knew that if they wanted to call him something better, it was going to have to come from them. He couldn't demand it. He was going to have to command it by his own example. 1 year later, in the summer of 1967, Srila Prabhupada revealed to some of his first followers what Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu had revealed to him. Oh, that only he could lead them. That's the title of the third volume of the original publication of the Lilamrita. And I take this title from an incident that happened in 1967. So as you may know, Prabhupada had 2 heart attacks on the ship, and then in 67 he had a 3rd heart attack. And he tried to get better on the East Coast. It didn't work, so then he went to the West Coast because California is supposed to have more sun. But they put him up in a beach house on the West Coast in a place where there wasn't much sun. In the Bay Area. Has anybody been to San Francisco? Okay. It's famous for not having much sun. There's an American writer, famous Mark Twain. He said, the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. So again, it wasn't working. And Prabhupada is openly saying now to the devotees taking care of him at this beach house, Tinson Beach, El Paradiso, he said, I have to go back to India to get my health back. If I'm going to continue as your leader, I need India's heat, I need Ayurvedic medicine, massage. And so they're completely freaked out. They're thinking, well, what about us? And they said, well, so actually, this is the incident now. It was Hayagriva, Kirtanananda, and Mukunda. And Hayagriva and Kirtanananda, the way Mukunda tells it, more or less kind of forced Mukunda to ask Swamiji a question that Mukunda didn't want to ask him because it was very personal and, well, you'll see. Okay, so here's the beginning. Where's the mic? Okay, so Prabhu will read the beginning of the exchange.
When you die, what will happen to the movement? I asked. Will you have a successor who will continue your work and look after our spiritual education?
As I heard myself say the words, I realized it had been a mistake to ask this. The Swami sat silently, looking out the window at the sand dunes and the mountains. It was high tide, and I could hear the waves pounding the beach. Gulls shrieked. The Swami muttered something quietly. I couldn't hear what you said, Swami, I said carefully. Can you repeat it?
Actually, it is an insult to the spiritual master, he said.
He turned away from the window and looked at me pensively, as if he was hurt by my question. I'm sorry, Swami, I said. I felt like shrinking into the carpet. He closed his eyes. Outside, a dog barked. A shallow stream of tears appeared below each of his eyes and flowed over his cheeks. He slowly wiped them away. My spiritual master, he said, and his voice choked to gravel. I was stunned. What had I done?
My spiritual master, he said. He was no ordinary spiritual master. He paused again and then whispered falteringly, he saved me.
Yeah, now look at this. Ordinary spiritual master? It sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? But Prabhupada, it's one of the, maybe 1 or 2 times he said that. But he's remember the distinction between regular guru and great acharya in the last lesson? He's talking about the stature of Srila Saraswati Thakur. And he actually is on the same level. So when the devotee asked them this, what should we do if you die? Should we get one of your godbrothers to instruct us? So Prabhupada couldn't even countenance the idea. It was too wrong. It was too crazy. So that exchange came from Miracle on 2nd Avenue by Mukunda Maharaj. And Hayagriva also wrote a book, and Hayagriva was there. It was called The Hare Krishna Explosion, another must-read. Hayagriva offers a similar account of the incident, as well as Srila Prabhupada's crucial reflection later. So later on, Swamiji said something to the devotees about this exchange. And here's what Prabhupada said.
Later, Swamiji tells us what we should have always known. There is no one to replace him. The very idea is insulting. If someone comes and tells you something different, he says you will be confused.
You will be confused. In both accounts, both in Hare Krishna Explosion and Miracle on 2nd Avenue, Prabhupada refers to his Guru Maharaj as, quote, no ordinary spiritual master, reminding us of the difference between a regular spiritual master and a great Acharya. Neglected by his godbrothers, Srila Prabhupada knows and is now disclosing that he is being uniquely empowered to lead the new international devotees as the foundational spiritual master of a fresh branch of Lord Chaitanya's, quote, desired tree of devotional service. So that was that. I mean, that was the incident that made it very clear to us that only he could lead us. By the depth of Prabhupada's surrender, he was being uniquely empowered to know how to turn people like me into aspiring devotees, whereas he knew his godbrothers couldn't do that. And he even went so far as to say, you will be confused if you go to them. And that's actually what happened. After Prabhupada left, people tried to consult some of Prabhupada's godbrothers, and they followed the advice, and it was chaos. It gave us this so-called zonal acharya nightmare. Okay, so that was 67 July. At the same time, there's a letter here and there's a purport, couple of letters, where Prabhupada makes it clear that it's not our business to criticize his godbrothers. We're junior to them. So Prabhupada doesn't want us to disrespect them, but he doesn't want us to take intimate shiksha from them either. So the above incident further set the stage for Lord Chaitanya to reveal Swamiji as Srila Prabhupada. So I have to get a lady to read this. Only a few ladies here. Okay. Want to read? Yeah. So here, I'm going to set the stage now. Okay. So it's 1968. It's Boston, Massachusetts. It's May. And Prabhupada said, it's time for some of you to take second initiation, Brahmin initiation. So he gives a few of the men Brahmin initiation. But there's a few ladies there too. And they're very disappointed they didn't get Brahmin initiation. And they make a big fuss. And so Prabhupada relents, and he didn't think it's a big deal. So he gives them Brahmin initiation too. And one of them is my god sister, Govinda Dasi. Has Govinda ever been here? Have you seen her? She's one of the best Prabhupada storytellers because she and her husband in the early days, they were a husband-wife team that served Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada allowed her to have a very almost familiar relationship with Prabhupada, like grandfather, granddaughter, where sometimes she would scold Prabhupada, or at least be very forward with him. So this is how it happened. This is how Krishna made Swamiji Prabhupada through one of my god sisters. After ISKCON's first Brahmin initiation in Boston in the spring of 1968, Govinda Dasi recalls how, quote, Swamiji became, quote, Srila Prabhupada. And here's Govinda. I'm going to read something and then you're going to read something on the screen. So Govinda says, all along everyone knew him as Swamiji. This is up until May of 1968. So Gaurasundar, her husband, his name was Gaurasundar. So Gaurasundar, my husband, decided he wanted to call me Govinda Ji, because Gaurasundar was dabbling in Sanskrit, and he read that Ji was a term of endearment. So he wanted to call his wife Govinda Ji. And so he asked Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, no, actually, Ji is a third-class form of address. It's better not to call her Govinda Ji. So then Govinda says, so I piped up. I was sitting right in front of him, and I said, well, if it's a third-class form of address, why are we calling you Ji? Why are we calling you Swamiji? So that's the first thing. She challenges like that. Why are we calling you Swamiji? And here's Prabhupada's first response is this. And he said, it's not very important. I said, oh no, it's very important. So she's pushing back on Prabhupada trying to dismiss the whole thing. Because my dear god sister Govinda is a very straight-talking Texas lady. In Texas, they shoot straight. So she's speaking very frankly. Why are we calling you Ji? And he said, it's not very important. I said, oh no, it's very important. If it's a third-class form of address, then we don't want to call you that. Okay, so Mataji, can you read with a Texas accent? No, I don't. Y'all. We don't want to call you Swamiji, y'all. No, just read. Just read how you know how to read.
We want to call you the most first-class form of address. So tell us what would be a good name for us to call you by. And he was very humble, very reluctant, but I pressed him. We've got to change this. And he said, you can call me Gurudev or Guru Maharaja or Prabhupada.
Okay, stop for a second. So you see how it's going. She's pressing him. So at that point, Prabhupada sees what's going on. That it's coming from them, it's coming from us. He's not demanding a name change, but it's coming from us. So his mood shifts. And so he suggests a few choices here. You can call me Gurudev, Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada. And then?
So I said, well, that's 3. We need 1. So which one is the best? And he answered, Srila Prabhupada is nice. That is the best. So I said, from today you will be called Srila Prabhupada.
Govindasi ki Jai. That's how it happened. And then Govinda said in the memory, she said, so I told all the devotees. Some of the devotees didn't like it because Prabhupada's kind of a tongue twister. Prabhupada and Swamiji. It kind of flows more easily. But we gradually started calling him Srila Prabhupada from that time. Now, here's my observation about that whole incident. If Srila Prabhupada had told Govinda Dasi that Gurudev or Guru Maharaj were the best, the name change would not have been so momentous. Seeing that his devotees wanted to respect him more, Srila Prabhupada took the opportunity to identify the role Lord Chaitanya and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had given him. In ISKCON's multiple guru culture today, we have different Gurudevs, but we all share the same foundational master, Srila Prabhupada. Quote, the master at whose feet all masters sit. So Prabhupada, on purpose, intentionally, said, call me Prabhupada, that's the best. And of course, Prabhupada's godbrothers had issues with him for letting us do that later. But we'll look at that a little later. The stage was now set for Srila Prabhupada to formally identify himself in relation to his ISKCON mission. So that was May 68. Fast forward to July 70, the month I joined in Boston. And here's another 1973 Bhaktivedanta Manor picture. Prabhupada liked this picture. He said, you can use this for a Founder-Acharya photo because it's very dignified and has a very nice look to it. So in July 70, where's the mic? Okay? Read that.
On July 28, 1970, when Srila Prabhupada legally established a government body commission to manage ISKCON, especially after his demise. He formally identified his relationship to his mission.
For the first time, if you have the database and you go into legal documents and then you click on directions of management, you'll see this, where Prabhupada's officially creating a governing body, officially identifying his position, and then the next day he legally creates a separate entity called the BBT, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. Because God forbid, if anything should happen to ISKCON, at least there'll be a book trust to keep publishing the books. That's the main thing. Okay, so Mataji, read that.
International Society for Krishna Consciousness Incorporated, Founder-Acharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
Right. Now that was 1970, the year I joined. There was actually, I didn't know it, I was too new and young to know what was going on, but there was actually a threat to ISKCON going on. And it was coming from some of Prabhupada's jealous godbrothers. He had godbrothers who appreciated his work, and he had godbrothers who didn't. So some of them were minimizing Prabhupada's position, and that minimization got to some devotees who were in India, and then they passed it on to some devotees in America, and it wasn't good. And there was doubt amongst some of the leaders in ISKCON about Srila Prabhupada and his position, because there was this propaganda coming from some jealous people. So things were happening, like Prabhupada always knew what was going on. So in the spring of that year, right around the same time, spring, summer, Prabhupada introduced his pranam mantra to us, so we get it clear what his mission is. Namaste Saraswati Devi. We're going to see that in a few slides. And where I joined in Boston, there was a press. It was called ISKCON Press. The BBT had been formed on paper, but it wasn't up and running until 2 years later. So where I joined, they were producing the books. When I joined, they were producing the Bhagavatam in chapters, in paperback chapters. And every time a new chapter would come out, Brahmananda Swami, at the time, he brought the new chapter to Prabhupada. So on the cover of a new chapter that he brought to Prabhupada, to identify the author, it said, like maybe the chapter was called The Lord in the Heart, one of those second chapter titles. Say The Lord in the Heart. And then to identify the author, it said A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. No Founder-Acharya, no, no Prabhupada, no Founder-Acharya. So there was a minimization going on. Prabhupada sometimes would receive letters from temple presidents, and it was written on their own stationery. And Prabhupada, you can see in the database, he writes them back and he says, by the way, when you write me a letter, you should write on temple stationery. And on the letterhead, it should say International Society for Krishna Consciousness. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. On that temple stationery. Prabhupada. Founder-Acharya. And then these things were going on. They were somewhere, and then when the BBT moved into their new building in LA, there was nothing on the building identifying it as the BBT or that Prabhupada's the Founder-Acharya. So it wasn't good. And then the last straw was when a temple president, unbeknownst to the devotees, it wasn't in ISKCON's name, it was in his name. So one fine day, he sold the temple, took the money, and ran. So when that happened, Prabhupada decided that to the directions of management legal documents, there had to be something more. And so now, in 1974, we have this. On July 22, 1974, Srila Prabhupada drafted an amendment to his earlier management document, reasserting his supreme position in ISKCON. The mic? Okay, so read this amendment.
it is declared that His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is the Founder-Acharya of ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness.
And furthermore,
he is the supreme authority in all matters of the society. His position cannot be occupied by anyone else, and his name and title must appear in all documents, letterheads, publications, and buildings of the society.
those things were specifically mentioned because those are the things that have been neglected. So, and now in the digital age, we could say, how are we presenting Prabhupada on our websites? When I was traveling in Europe, I was presenting at a very prominent temple in Europe, and just for fun, I went onto their homepage to see how they were presenting Prabhupada, and I couldn't find him. He wasn't even there. And then finally I noticed a tab that said, History. So, with dread, I clicked on History, and sure enough, there's a little photo of Prabhupada and a little brief bio. So, aghast, I went to one of the managers and I said, Prabhu, if we think Prabhupada is history, guess what we are? We're history too. Now, to their credit, the next year they had a much better presentation on the homepage, because that was the year 2014 when the GBC published the Founder-Acharya booklet that our committee, mainly Ravindra Sarup Prabhu, wrote, Srila Prabhupada, the Founder-Acharya. And I was traveling also with my seminars, so it became more prominent, the Founder-Acharya focus. Now, when Prabhupada made that amendment in the summer of '74, he was also translating and annotating the CC. So here he's asserting his supremacy at ISKCON, but in this CC purport we're going to see, Prabhupada is identifying himself and all of us as humble servants of Saraswati Thakur and the whole Gaudiya line. So let's look at that. Hey, Mike, you got it?
That same year, 1974, even as Srila Prabhupada was reasserting his position as ISKCON's Founder-Acharya, while he was translating the Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, he also reasserted his and our disciples' obedience and service to his own spiritual master in the mission of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu.
And here is the excerpt.
As members of the Krishna consciousness movement, we belong to the family or disciplic succession of Saraswati Goswami, and thus we are known as Saraswatas. Obeisances are therefore offered to the spiritual master as Saraswata Deva or a member of the Saraswata family. Namaste Saraswati Deve, whose mission is to broadcast the cult of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Gauravani Pracharane, and to fight with the impersonalists and voidists, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshakaya.
Okay, so by founding ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada had made a clean break from the non-cooperation that had fragmented Srila Saraswati Thakur's Gaudiya mission. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada now was reasserting his and our absolute dependence on and fidelity to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as disciplic executors of Mahaprabhu's mission. Now, over the next two slides, Srila Prabhupada offers a striking analogy to deepen our understanding of his position as ISKCON's Founder-Acharya. So that was '74. In February '75, Prabhupada made his one and only visit to the continent of South America, to Caracas, Venezuela. He visited Central America, Mexico City specifically, a few times. But in February '75, Prabhupada is in Caracas. That's actually from the place. And he's lecturing on Bhagavatam 1.1.1, famous Janma Yasya verse. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to see some words, and then we're going to hear Prabhupada in the next slide actually making a very interesting analogy between himself as the Founder-Acharya of ISKCON and Krishna as the creator of the creation. It's really pretty amazing. So where's the mic? Okay, you want to read? All right, so you read that.
So here it said that the origin is life, because here it said
Yaton vayaditadatascha arteshvabhigyaksvarahat.
he is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent.
Right, this is the famous first verse of the Bhagavatam where Vyasadeva is identifying the absolute truth and the goal. And now, Prabhupada, you're going to hear him make this very interesting analogy.
Just like if I am taken as the origin of this Krishna consciousness movement, that means I know everything directly and indirectly of all this movement. If I do not know directly and indirectly everything of this movement, then I cannot be called the Founder-Acharya. And as soon as the origin becomes a knower, he is life.
Okay, sorry about that, but you saw the words. As soon as the origin becomes a knower, he is life. As Krishna is the origin and life of his creation, so our Founder-Acharya is the origin and life of his ISKCON mission. This is an amazing analogy Prabhupada makes. The crowning glory of our initiating and instructing spiritual masters is how they enrich, enhance, and deepen our foundational relationship with Srila Prabhupada.
As ISKCON's Founder-Acharya, Srila Prabhupada is the life and soul of all generations of his followers. Moreover, whoever enriches our foundational identity as Prabhupadanugas is also glorious, deepening the cooperation we will need to take Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's mission of Krishna consciousness to every town and village on earth.
Right. Okay, lesson outcomes. So when you ask questions, here are the outcomes to relate to. So by the end of the lesson, students will be able to identify Puranic and Gaudiya prophecies Srila Prabhupada fulfilled, recount Lord Chaitanya's historical stage setting, East and West, for Prabhupada's advent, recount how Prabhupada went from obscurity to Swamiji to only he, to Prabhupada, to Founder-Acharya between 1965 and 1970, recount how Srila Prabhupada formally identified his supreme position in ISKCON and how he was later obliged to reassert that position, identify the position of Prabhupada and ourselves in relation to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Lord Chaitanya's mission, and finally identify Prabhupada as the life and soul of all generations of his followers. So tomorrow when we meet at 11, we're going to charge fearlessly into the Abhideya section. You notice the color scheme changes it's actually light pink. It's kind of washed out here. That's called his mission's roots. Transition. Having deepened our understanding of Srila Prabhupada's relationship with all of us as our Founder-Acharya, Sambandha, we are now ready to enter the Abhideya phase of our seminar, how to act on our understanding by deepening our service to his mission. All right, are there any questions or comments, reflections?
So we see these prophecies and Gaudiya prediction. Is there any incidents where Prabhupada himself knew that he's going to fulfill this prophecy? Or Prabhupada aware of this situation that he's going to be the founder? Because you mentioned that in the Ganga prediction, Prabhupada actually suppressed the 4 prediction and then he told about the 10,000 years. So is that is also kind of Prabhupada aware of it?
Kind of a what? Prabhupada?
Aware of he's going to be the founder.
Yeah. Well, as I said, when he came over, he wasn't thinking like that. He just wanted to revive the mission. He was writing his godbrother, hey, come on, let's do it. Better late than never. But they couldn't do it. But, when Prabhupada cited the 10,000 year thing, he did that in 1969 on May 11th in a conversation with the counterculture poet Allen Ginsberg in Columbus, Ohio, because Allen asked, is there a prediction in Shastra that this Hare Krishna is supposed to last? Oh yes, Prabhupada said, 10,000 years. And he cited Purana. He didn't give the exact, but if you go online, you can see where it comes from. It's the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. So, I mean, Prabhupada is so transparent that he didn't think like that, although sometimes he would tell us, like he said at my birth, an astrologer said, Hukum chalbe, your order will be executed. This person will cross the ocean at the age of 70 and start a spiritual movement. I mean, amazing astrology, right? He actually predicted that. And then of his father, because he said his father was a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. You see in the preface for Krishna book, in the dedication. And Prabhupada told us his father would always be very lenient with him. When Prabhupada didn't want to go to school, the father would say, all right, Rajni, he will go tomorrow. He's okay. But Rajni was so disturbed that she hired a man to carry Abai to school, kicking and screaming, right? He didn't want to go to school. So Prabhupada said, I was my father's pet. And any sadhu that came, please bless my son, he will become a pure devotee of Radharani. And then he arranged Mridanga lessons, and Rajani said, what is the use of this, Mridanga lessons? Well, he's going to be a great preacher. So then Prabhupada told us, maybe he knew, things like that. He would just hint. He would drop hints. So and that's what we saw in the persona of Prabhupada. This is why we bowed down, even though we didn't know, as I said, a holy man from a holy roller, everything. We bowed down to Prabhupada because in one person we saw something we never saw before. Absolute power and absolute humility in the same person. And that just inspired you to bow down. It was just amazing to see that. And just by seeing Prabhupada, we know this person, at last, here's somebody who's not going to cheat me, who's not pretending, right, to be the avatar or to know something he doesn't. No, he's real. So Prabhupada, when he was all alone, as in New York, Krishna showed him, they're not going to help you, but you have to do it. And that's what Prabhupada was doing after the Gaudiya Math broke up. We're going to see next lesson. And we do have to get here earlier to test all the sound, because really at the end of tomorrow's lesson, it's the best ending with sound. So after the Gaudiya mission broke up, you're going to see tomorrow what Prabhupada was doing on his own. He was carrying the mission in his heart. Back to Godhead, Gita Nagari, scheme, League of Devotees, taking sannyas. He was, even if nobody was going to do it, he was going to do it, do or die. He was going to go. And he had to convince Sumati Maharaji, please give me passage. Swamiji, you will die. All my secretaries say, I cannot be responsible for your death. And she was almost right. He almost did pass away. But Prabhupada had that absolute surrender, absolute conviction. So he was absolutely empowered to do what he did, turning, Mlechas Yavanas into aspiring devotees, hippies to happies, atheists to theists, the whole thing, animals into human beings. So did Prabhupada know? That wasn't Krishna's way. Krishna, but if you look at Prabhupada's whole life, Krishna, you'll see, especially in the next lesson. This next lesson, lesson 4, is like a lifetime in preparation volume. It's from the moment Prabhupada, it doesn't start with his birth, but from the moment Prabhupada met his Guru Maharaj until the moment he stepped on the Jaladuta. Those 43 years. So Krishna just arranged Prabhupada's life for this whole thing. this whole mission. And he wanted to join the mission right away. Now I'm giving away the whole next lesson. But he didn't, he was responsible. He already was married, he had a child, he had a wife. It would have been injustice, Prabhupada said. So the astrologer also said, well, this person could be very wealthy, like another Birla, another Tata, Dalmia. So Prabhupada thought, well, if that's true, then I will become wealthy. And then after the family is finished, the children are grown, Vanaprastha, then I can do the mission with my wealth. But Krishna had another plan. So we'll look at that more next time.
The setting of the scene by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we were mentioning about how Mahaprabhu came and gave the holy name. So that was my observation in reading that. Can we say that Mahaprabhu gave the holy name, he propagated throughout India? Then the next is Bhaktivinoda Thakur trying to send the materials overseas.
Trying to what?
Trying to send the Gaudiya literature.
Yeah.
Posting it to the overseas.
Yeah. And
because I saw a video made by devotees.
Srinathananda?
I'm not sure. They were showing every scientific advancement made during that time, how it was used.
Uh-huh.
And then later on, Bhaktisiddhanta formally created the Gaudiya Math, and he started throughout India, a formal institution. Then that kind of set the stage, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati himself wanted to send his disciples overseas. Then one of them is our Prabhupada, and he goes off, and then can we say that as a step by step setting?
Yeah, Prabhupada, he never presented himself as anything but a servant of the previous acharyas. Yeah, it's Krishna's way of doing things. It's just that Prabhupada, he did it. Everybody else talked about it, and then after Prabhupada did it, then other acharyas were emboldened to come over also, from other sampradayas even. Prabhupada blazed the trail. Yeah, it's not, we should always, therefore we shouldn't say, Sampradaya-Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. No, he didn't found a new sampradaya. It's ISKCON Founder-Acharya. You can say Sangstapaka-Acharya, that means the same thing, founder, like the Goswami, Sangstapako. Yeah, they established, founded, excavated eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. So yeah, Srila Prabhupada, he was the Senapati Bhakta who was being prepared by Mahaprabhu through all the previous acharyas to come and pull the trigger to do it. But he wasn't alone. We're never alone. There's only one story, and you never hear this anywhere else but from Bhavananda Prabhu. You know the story about how Krishna telling Prabhupada to come to the material world? You know this story? Yeah, I mean, you never hear this from anybody. And Bhavananda said the only people who were in the room were himself and Upendra Prabhu, who's not here to corroborate it because he's late, passed away. In Australia, right here, right?
No, we don't.
From Govardhan? Where was he? Anyway, so Upendra and Bhavananda says, was in the Lotus building in his quarters, Prabhupada, relaxed, and Prabhupada was saying, I did not want to come to this nasty place. I mean, you never hear this. Prabhupada never talked like this, but Bhavananda Prabhu swears. It's too nasty, this place. And so, but Krishna was saying, no, I will make all arrangements. You just go down there and write these books. Now, there is another kind of story Harishari Prabhu tells, that he was taking over from being Prabhupada's servant from Harikesh Swami at the time. I think he was Swami. So when Harikesh passed the baton, so to speak, he said, I heard, I didn't hear from Prabhupada, but I heard that while Prabhupada was alone in Radha Damodar in Vrindavan, he had a visitation from Srila Rupa Goswami, to whom Prabhupada was always praying at the Samadhi, because he was looking out his window and he could see Rupa Goswami's Samadhi. So Harishari thought, I have to ask Prabhupada about this. And Harishari had this relationship with Prabhupada. Prabhupada felt very relaxed in his association, and he liked to tell about the early days, his days before coming to America. So Harishari was saying, I've got to wait for the right moment, right? So they were in Bhaktivedanta Manor, and it was all of a sudden Prabhupada was talking to some, I don't know if it was several devotees or maybe just Harishari, but he was talking about before coming to America. And so Harishari thought, this is my chance, right? Because Prabhupada was in a very open mood, very relaxed, talking freely about India, pre-USA. And then so Harishari pops the question. Srila Prabhupada, I heard that before coming to America, you had a visitation from Srila Rupa Goswami. Is that true? And as soon as he asked the question, Prabhupada, his mood totally changed. He became very withdrawn and untalkative and very kind of within. And all Prabhupada said was, everyone knows that. He didn't deny it. He even said everyone, but then he changed the subject. He didn't want to talk about that confidential exchange. But there's a book maybe you've seen by my late great god sister Mulapakriti Devi, who wrote this, Srila Prabhupada, Our Friend to All. Have you seen this book? It's a thin paperback book. Before Mulapakriti became ill and passed away from cancer, she was going around in Vrindavan and interviewing sadhus who knew Prabhupada before he came to America. It's an amazing book. Now, it's not corroborated, just like I was part of the Lilamrita team. So before we'd publish anything, we take all these memories and we try to get it corroborated from different angles, because people say so many things and they're not necessarily true. And even then, some things slip past us that I think were corrected on a subsequent edition. So anyway, there was one Gopal-Acharya or Gopal somebody. Anyway, he was a young brahmachari, and he would like to hear Bhaktivedanta Swami speak. Because Prabhupada in the Radha Damodar courtyard, sometimes he would have a class, or this brahmachari would just come to Prabhupada's rooms to hear him speak. So one day he came, and Prabhupada was ill, and he couldn't really speak that day. So Gopal just left. But he came back the next day, and the next day, it was completely the opposite. Prabhupada seemed to be completely fine and robust and very effulgent and talking a lot. And so Gopal said, Swamiji, you've made a miraculous recovery. I'm so happy you're in good health. And so, according to the memory, Swamiji said, yes, last night I've had visitation from my Guru Maharaja. I was in too much anxiety that how am I going to write this Bhagavatam translation and purports so that it will touch the hearts of these Westerners. How am I going to do this? And there's other reports that Prabhupada would be prostrated in front of Rupa Goswami's Samadhi. Another sadhu was hearing crying coming from the Radha Damodar temple, so he just went on the roof finally after several nights, and he looked down in the courtyard, and there's Swami Bhaktivedanta prostrate. sobbing, begging Rupa Goswami for empowerment to write the books, the Bhagavatam, translation and commentary, English Bhagavatam. So, but on this occasion, where Prabhupada said to Gopal, he said, yes, Guru Maharaj has come. And he's assured me, now don't worry, we will help you. We meaning he and the 6 Goswamis, and Baladeva Vibhushan and Vishwanath Chakravarti. Now you can write purports like them. And you don't have to worry about anything. We will help you. So, those kinds of stories. But Prabhupada, he didn't talk like that hardly ever, because he was the Founder-Acharya of ISKCON, and he was, just like people ask me sometimes, oh, what's Prabhupada's rasa, with Krishna? Well, don't ask me. And because Prabhupada didn't talk about that. When he was walking among us, he was our Founder-Acharya. And he was there to help us become Krishna conscious. So even if I knew what Prabhupada's rasa is, how would that help me for my present position? I have to follow his instructions and follow him out of this world. And if he wants to show me more, he can show me more if I'm ready, qualified. So, I forgot your question.
No, just setting the scene with Mahaprabhu and then the progression.
Yeah, the progression. Yeah, Prabhupada was the saint about, he's the one that did it. And even one, you're going to see in lesson 10, how there's somebody criticizes Prabhupada. Because he's traveling all over the world, doing what no one has ever done, bringing all over the world Vaishnavism. But even some jealous Swami says, well, if Mahaprabhu wanted Krishna consciousness all over the world, why didn't he do it himself? And so Prabhupada laughs. He said, just see, he left it for me to do. He loves his devotee more than himself. He wants his devotee to get the credit. Right? That's Krishna's way. So Prabhupada would always give us the credit. We were just trying to keep up with Prabhupada, just trying to control ourselves. We were basically animal-like people that Prabhupada... One time Prabhupada compared us, just like Lord Ramachandra had these monkeys to defeat Ravana. So similarly, Krishna has sent me so many monkey-like men to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Well, it's getting kind of late here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.